Okay, I'm going to break down this cute little character into steps that are way easier to follow than you might imagine, so that you can have a go, create this, and amaze yourself. So I'm using the app Procreate for this tutorial, but I don't see any reason why you couldn't use a different app on a different tablet and still follow along. Within Procreate, however, I'm using the default A4 canvas, which is 297 by 210 millimeters at 300 dpi. And I'm using the sRGB code, the one that ends in 2.1 here on the list. I will only be using the classic library brushes that come within Procreate. If you haven't updated the Procreate app, then it's the only set of brushes that you'll see anyway. But if you have updated it, go to here, back to libraries, and you've got the two choices. I'm not using the Procreate library, I'm using the classic. In terms of the colors, you can download the color palette for free. There is a link to my Patreon down in the description, along with all the hexadecimal codes if you want to do it yourself. And Patreon is also the place that you can support this channel and gain access to exclusive content, such as extended versions of most of these tutorials. Big thank you to those people who do support me over at Patreon. It makes a massive difference, so thank you so much. Another way of supporting the channel is just simply subscribing, leaving a comment, and giving the video a thumbs up. And with all of that said and done, we're going to get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate the canvas to the portrait orientation. I'm going to go to my colors and use the first color on the top row. I'm going to drag into the canvas and it flood fills. Now please be aware that my camera might slightly distort the colors, but don't worry if you've got the color palette downloaded or you've used the hexadecimal codes, then don't worry, you are using the right colors. I'm going to go to my layers. I'll create a new layer, layer 2, back to the colors. I'm going to use the second color on the top row. I'm going to go in, I'm going to create a load of splodges, so we'll go with the airbrushing soft brush, about 10% size, about 40% opacity strength, and we're just going to build this up in textures. We just want to create a real kind of mottled appearance. We're going to concentrate on like the top third initially, just that area for now. Create some variety of textures and colors. Let's immediately move along to the third color. Keep pushing these colors around. Again, no great care, we're just creating variety of color. Imagine trees in the distance that are really blurred out. We've got a load of colors. Let's go to the fourth color. Now I'm going to imagine that there's maybe a set of trees over here and one over here as well. So maybe just some slight separation. Not too much of this color. Fifth color. Again, just some slight separation, and maybe as they get lower down, you get some lower bushes and things like that. Again, there's nothing really to define this. Go to the sixth color. Again, just some highlights. Let's go to the seventh color. Again, there's nothing difficult. Eighth color. Some nice orange colors coming through here now. Ninth color. This is a more vibrant color, so let's just be a little bit more sparing with this perhaps. And the 10th color. I like this 10th color. I might use this a little bit more. Help bind it all together. And we can go to that layer, adjustments, Gaussian blur, and we'll blur in even more, so about the 20%, deselect. I'll create a new layer, layer 3. I'll stay with the soft brush with an airbrushing, and I will go back to the first color on the top row, maybe about 5% size, and let's keep it a bit lower, about 20% strength, opacity. And we can just imagine a tree trunk. Again, very vague, we're just really suggesting it. Just hints at something, a structure, branches, and then even with that, we're going to go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and we're going to blur it in maybe a bit less, to about 15% perhaps. Deselect. I'm going to create a new layer, tap on the N, scroll down to the Add Blend Mode, and I'm going to go to this nice cool blue colour, the 8th colour on the bottom row. Stay with the soft brush. I'm going to put it quite big, maybe about 30% size, about 10% opacity, and then just go near the top. A few taps of this. It's bringing some cool daylight down between the gap in the trees. It suggests sort of natural light just pouring down. Don't do too much of that, maybe a little bit too much. Concentrate a little bit nearer the top, and it just brings a bit of life to that scene. I might switch back to the 10th colour on the top row and turn that size down about 10% size. Stay at the 10% strength opacity, and just a touch more, a few more points of the warm colour where the sun is just catching that as well. Again, it's really blurred out, and really it's just creating an effect for a background. Maybe a couple there. Let's go for the 9th colour, a bit warmer, a bit more colour in the corners perhaps. Yeah, and if yours isn't exactly the same as mine, which it won't be, then it doesn't matter, because it's just creating just a kind of very loose effect for the background. So I'm going to go to my layers, create a new layer, layer 5. Again, with a soft brush, with an airbrushing, use the N2 colours predominantly, so we'll go with the 10th colour. And about 2/3 of the way up, we're going to start creating, just imagine the ground level. That's just where the floor, where the leaves are starting to collect a little bit, so we can do a few passes of that across. Again, it's only at 10% opacity and 10% size. Let's go back to the 9th colour on the top row. Tap in a few dashes of this. Maybe we'll turn it down 5%. Get a few points of this colour. Now we're painting leaves on the ground, although we can't identify them as leaves yet. That's fine. We can go back to some of the other colours too. Let's go back, for example, to the 6th colour on the top row. Get some lighter colours coming through. Almost a hint more towards the greens. Don't spend long on that. Back to some warmer colours, the 9th colour on the top row. Some of this warmth coming through. Now you don't need to go too far down, just a little bit below halfway is about right. I'm then going to create a new layer, layer 6, and I'm going to move along to some of the colours down here. I'm going to go to the 9th colour on the middle row. I'm going to stay with a soft brush with an airbrushing, 5% size, maybe a bit stronger now, about 20% strength. I'm going to rotate it just because it's easier to do. And then we're going to start bringing some sweeps of this colour in that background. I'm going to turn it up to 10% size and turn it up to a much stronger opacity, maybe 50%. Don't want any of that green showing really, not for the bottom section. So let's use this colour, blot it out, and then maybe go backwards from that. It's quite a light colour. Let's go backwards to the 7th colour on the middle row. And then we'll use some of that coming through as well. From the bottom mainly. Sweep it up and then have it kind of fade out, a lighter colour in this area, like that. Then what we want, really the ground to start having a bit more clarity in the foreground. So I'm going to go for the drawing sticks brush. And I'm going to go back to the 9th colour on the middle row. And then for this bottom area, I want to do some lines going across. So I'm going to put it to about 10% size, 50% strength. Just do some lines across and you can hold it so it snaps. We want a series of these. It's okay for there to be gaps, and they don't have to be absolutely horizontal. Doesn't have to be perfect. Once you get the hang of it, you don't need to perhaps hold it till it snaps. You can just do it more freehand. Just create a nice texture for the ground. Then I'm going to go along to the 10th colour. Do some of this light colour backwards and forwards. Sweep it across. so. Let's go back to the 7th colour. Get some of these lines coming through. It's almost like the floor is made of wood, perhaps, like a wood grain. It's quite a nice surface. And then 10th colour. And perhaps in this background there's just a bit more of this light colour. Okay, so once we've got a layer of texture here, once we've got this, we're going to go to the selection, rectangle. I'm going to blur out the bottom section, just create a rectangle here. Then feather, I'm going to put it up maybe about 40%. Then the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, blur that across to about 10%. Deselect, it just blurs out this foreground. But I also want it to blur out here as well. So we're just getting a shallow area that is in focus. So again, with the selection, rectangle, just grab that whole section there, and we want it to feather out, but again to about 40%. Adjustments, Gaussian blur, and blur that in, maybe a bit further this time, about 15%, deselect, and you can see you've blurred this section, and we've just got a middle area that's in focus. And that's where we're going to do our little character. Perhaps we'll add a few more leaves, so we can do that on a new layer, layer 7, and then on this layer, I'm going to go in with the first colour on the middle row, still a soft brush with an airbrushing, about 5% size, 40% strength. We could do a few leaves, and they don't need to be overly articulated. You don't need to see all the detail of them. You have a few separate. And then with those, you can go in with like shadow colours for them. So we'll go for the 5th colour, turn the size of the brush down, 3% size, 40% opacity still. And then we can just sort of hint and suggest that bits, shadows that sit underneath the leaves. It gives them a little bit of weight. It gives them a 3D form. If they've got a shadow underneath it, then, you know, it gives them a 3D-ness. Don't need to overdo that though. Again, it's still going to exist within the blurred out area. So again, they don't need to be overly articulated. Let's go to the 6th colour, touch darker even. Let's go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and let's blur that in slightly more to about 10%. Deselect. We'll come back to that. We might add a bit more clarity of leaves, but we're going to create our character next. So we're going to create a new layer for this, layer 8. I'm going to switch brush. I'm going to go to the inking studio pen. I'm going to tap on it. I'm going to put the stabilization amount on max, which means you just get a more of a guided curve. If you don't have it, then you can end up with a wobblier shape. Put it on max, and you still can create wobbles, but you create much nicer curves too. I'm going to go for the first colour on the bottom row. And to create a character, first of all, I'm just going to do a circle, hold it until it snaps. It probably, chances are, going to create an ellipse rather than a circle. Tap up here, change that to a circle, drag it from the line, not the points. So you drag it from the points, it stretches it into an ellipse again, distorts it. But if you drag it from the line, you can change the scale, move it around anywhere outside the line as well. Let's set the shape. Want it kind of central, but a bit lower down. Let's just make sure we've got a similar distance on either edge. We can continue to move this, so don't worry too much. Tap outside and you deselect. I'm going to drag into the circle to flood fill it. And from the edges, we want to curve upwards. So we're almost like we're straightening it out. It's still a curve, but it's going much more kind of in an upwards direction. Just check at this point, try to eliminate any of those little dips. It's not always going to be the easiest to smooth that out, but we'll do our best. Doesn't matter if it's a bit dimply. We're just creating that curve only up to a certain point, because we've got another way of dealing with the little cup of the acorn. So once you've got one of those curves, the easiest way to deal with this is to slide, duplicate that layer, transform, flip it horizontally, and it's probably going to need just a bit of moving because it will create some strange shape at the edge. Just move it so that observe that edge on either side, and once it starts to smooth out, like for example, you'll notice it creates a little bit of a corner here. So move it this way until we've got a nice smoothing out on either side. You should be able to judge that by eye. Deselect, you've got a nice curve on either edge. Tap on the top version, merge down. Create a nice curve just across, doesn't really matter. Drag to flood fill. And then from the bottom of the acorn, just a little bump, a little point. It's going to have a shape. And then from that line, we're just going to blend it through like that. If it needs smoothing out, if it's a little bit dimply and just needs a bit of smoothing, then you can go ahead and do that. Just make it softer in its transitions. Just take a little bit of care, do what you can with the edges, and there's our shape. Now the hat is rather more difficult. The pattern and the shapes that exist, the overlapping kind of forms within the hat structure, the little cup, are very difficult to teach and explain. So I'm providing a PNG download. Follow the link in the description where it takes you to my Patreon. You can download the color palette. There's also a PNG image. Once you've downloaded that and saved it to your image gallery or on your iPad, you can go to the wrench, add, insert a photo, and insert it from your gallery. It imports it, and once you've got it here, you see you've got it as a nice translucent layer. Go on Uniform, Transform, and resize it to fit the top of our little acorn character. We don't want it all the way up here, it's going to look too tall. I've made the sides extra long, and that's fine. We want it to sit down a little bit more than that. So we resize it accordingly. I think about there in my example. It doesn't quite sit on the edges when you zoom in, just resize it. I think that's okay. We can then go back to layer 8, go in with something like the airbrushing medium hard brush, still with the same color, which was the first color on the bottom row, 3% size, 100% opacity, and we can just go in and just carefully go along the edges, like so. Any little anomalies we may have created, just get rid of those once we've zoomed in as well. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Little bobbly bits along the edges are all part of the aesthetic. It is a natural form, although a stylized version, it is still a natural form. Fill it in, like so. Now I'm going to keep the guidelines as the top layer. So I'm going to go from the layer underneath it, which was layer 8, and create a new layer. So again, it sits underneath the little guideline of the hat. On this new layer, I'm going to tap on it and put on clipping mask, which links it to the silhouette that we've created. Means we don't have to worry about being neat. I'm going to go to the second color on the bottom row. I'm going to go in with a soft brush with an airbrushing. And keep it quite big, maybe about 10% size, about 20% strength. And we're just going to start building in some light. Obviously, it's a rounded shape, so we need to create that suggestion. Don't worry about going into the cup or the hat area for now. Try to follow the shape of the acorn to some extent. So go with the natural curve of the object. Follow that direction. And you can see it doesn't take a great deal. We're leaving a bit more shadow on the edges and at the bottom area. It doesn't take a great deal to start to form a 3D quality to it. And then we'll go for the third color on the bottom row, and we'll maybe turn it down a bit more, so about 10%, and we do it more gradually. And we're going to have a section here, so let's turn up even more on the size. In fact, let's go for 15% size. We've got the central area where the face is. This is where most of the light is going to be. Just go over that more. Build up a nice central area here. That works quite nicely. Like I say, much more focused here. And then fourth colour, a bit more just where the face is going to be. I'm going to do it off slightly to the side, not much, but just a little bit. So it's almost like it's looking slightly in that direction. We can go back in and add a bit more shading to this, and that's fine. Okay, and then we're going to go in with the eraser. Put the eraser to the airbrushing medium hard brush, 5% size, 100% opacity, and we're just going to get rid of all of the light up in the little cup hat area. Let's just eliminate all of that. Careful at the edges. And then just switch on the eraser to this soft brush with an airbrushing, about 3% size and about 15% strength. And then just on that top edge, we can perhaps just, even at this point, just create a little bit of a shadow underneath the cap, cup. Gives it a bit of a shadow. Makes it sit there a bit more believably, which is quite nice. Okay, a new layer, tap on it and put on the clipping mask once more, which again is linked to the silhouette. We've also got the guideline to help us. I'm going to go in with the burnt tree brush within charcoals. Go to the stroke path and spacing and put it up to about 40% and done. Okay, let's go for the 10th colour on the bottom row. Let's put it about 70% opacity, about 4% size, and then concentrate on maybe the edges of these shapes a little bit, not completely. You can also sort of travel up into the whole area, but you can see there's a little bit more concentration at the bottom of that shape. It doesn't take a great deal to really bring out a bit more of the character of this little hat or cup. It begins to look more 3D, more textured, very easily. Just go in. For these ones you have to be a little less careful, it doesn't matter as long as you're aiming inside the shape. Zoom out to check, a bit more, and then we can go up to the top, pick them out even more. Let's just really pile up some of that lighter tone, texture in the top. More sun, more light is going to catch it generally, so double it up a little bit more along those edges. Let's pick another colour, maybe go to the middle row, let's go for the 8th colour. We want to vary it up, we definitely want a mixture of hues. So with this one, I'm just going to fill in more of those individual shapes. I want them to stand out a little bit more clearly. I'm trying to respect the lines, not go across the lines. I'm not just doing this across the whole shape. I'm trying to colour each individual section at a time. Respect the lines. And that enables us in a moment to go, for example, to the inserted image, slide and duplicate it. On the bottom version, I'm going to go to the adjustments, Gaussian blur, zoom in. I'm going to blur that in to about the 10%. And if you tick it or untick it, you can see just by blurring the outlines of that, it gives it a chunkiness, a 3D shape. I'm not getting rid of the top version, but I can go to the top version and just dial it back. I don't want it to be on nothing. I want it to be maybe, zoom in to check, about 70% do. And we see we're a long way towards the overall effect now, which is great. We'll go back to layer 11, going with a lighter colour. Let's go for the 10th colour on the middle row. Still with the burnt tree brush, let's turn it down, 2% size, 70% strength. We still have the clipping mask on, so we can be quite untidy near the top. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to put it up a bit more, actually, 3%. We can really just bring out some of the light up here. Curve that round. Again, bring that in to some of these. Bring it down. We don't want it underneath here. Naturally enough, there's a bit of a curve and a shadow. We can bring some of that light in a bit more. What I might do is switch to the airbrushing soft brush, 3% size, 10% opacity, and now I can just start to bring out more of the light in a slightly more controlled way. Perhaps turn that down to 2%. Again, just aim for the individual shapes to some extent. You can do sweeps across, but if you do too much of that, you're going to exaggerate that kind of guideline a bit too much. You don't want that really to show through that much. Let's go for a lighter or warmer colour perhaps. Let's go for the 2nd colour on the bottom row. And perhaps just some of the light colour from the acorn itself is reflecting up into the little bits of these shapes, just at the bottom of those areas there. Almost like a secondary light from itself. Sweep that across maybe, like so. And then we've got the stalk up here, so Back to some of our colours, we'll go for the 10th colour. Go back to the charcoals, burnt tree. We'll have some textures coming in here. Again, we don't need to worry about the edges because we have the clipping mask on, so we can be rather untidy, and that's not a problem. Join it in, 2% size. Let's go for 100% opacity, and we're using the 10th colour. Preference maybe one edge, so this side. Get some texture running through there, and let's go for the 10th colour on the middle row. Get even more highlight in here, and then even more at the very top. And one thing we need to be aware of is we have a dark line on the guide, so you see if you untick it, the difference. So we'll go to the top version, we'll go in with the eraser, put the eraser on a soft brush with an airbrushing, 2% size, maybe about 50% strength, and just remove it where it's a bit heavy, too pronounced. We don't really want a hard black line at the very edge anyway, so we can remove that. And it just nudged slightly more towards a believable, realistic look, and with a black line around it, it's not quite there. And we'll go back to the inserted image underneath. And because we blurred that in, we also create like a shadow on the outer edge, which we don't really need there. So we can just go along there and tidy that in as well. We don't want a shadow around the edge. Doesn't make as much sense. So a bit of tidying up makes it crisper, a bit nicer. That bit looks more convincing now. So I'm happy enough with that for now. We need to move on to the rest of the little character. So we'll go to our layers, go to the top, create a new layer, layer 13. Let's create a couple of eyes. So we'll go in with the airbrushing medium hard brush. Let's go to the darkest color we have, which is the 7th color on the bottom row. Let's put the brush size down to 2% size, 100% opacity, and let's create a little ellipse. Let's hold it until it creates a nicer ellipse. Rotate it so it's maybe slightly leaning that way, but not too much. Edit the ellipse. And we can squash it from one of the little circles. I'm more about getting the shape of it at this point rather than the size. We can do the size from pulling at the outer line rather than the little circles. We can move it around. I'm going to have it slightly more indented. Turn it down. I don't want it too close to the cap. I don't want it too close to the edge there. So I think about there. Then we can just drag, float fill. Any little anomalies, just go and smooth those in. Tidy up the edge. And then rather than trying to do that all again, we'll just go to the layer slide and duplicate it. Transform. Move the other one over here. Now I'm going to rotate it slightly so it's pitched that way and pitched that way, just ever so slightly. Now I want the distance between there and there to be greater than the distance between there and there. So I don't want it to be different in terms of how close it gets to the hat. I just want it to ever so slightly hint at it looking that way. So maybe with the bottom version, need to push it a bit further there. Maybe the top version just needs to be a hint lower. I don't want it to look over the top lower, but just comes down a little bit. Like I said, I don't want it to look too dramatically different distance to the line of the cap, but just a hint. And create a new layer. And on this new layer, I'm going to do a mouth and some eyebrows. So I'm going to go in with a monoline brush within calligraphy, tap on the brush. I'm going to put the stabilization amount, streamline at 50, and also the stabilization here at 50. So the streamline amount at 50, the stabilization at 50, and done. The size about 70% and 100% opacity. And then without too much thought, just do a smile, hold it, and it should snap to a suitable shape. Now you can redo that, create your character as much as you want, but I'm just going to keep it quite simple. Do some eyebrows, hold it till it snaps. Do an eyebrow, hold it till it snaps. I'm quite happy with that. Doesn't need to be overly complicated, just a cute little character. I'm going to go to the layers 13, tap on the top version, tap on it and merge down. That way I can move the eyes now together. So transform, I can decide where they want to be. Go on freeform, I can squash them in more if I want to, space them apart, whatever you think works for your character. Deselect. On the eyes, I'm going to tap on and put on the alpha lock. I'm going to go to the 8th color on the bottom row. I'm going to go in with the airbrushing soft brush, 3% size and really low, about 5% opacity. And just circle round a little bit, then turn it down, 1%. And just some hints at reflections around the edges. I'm not doing much of this, it's really subtle. Just so it isn't completely flat looking even at the edges, but not much of it. Then we're going to turn it up 40%. I'm going to add some light. Doesn't go all the way to the top, as you'll see. Same on this side. And then I'm just going to have some kind of patchy reflection. Doesn't need to be overly defined. Something like this, and you can see it adds a kind of realistic sheen. Maybe it's a bit close to the edge, so I can always go back in with the black colour. Same settings, just trace it back from the edge there a little bit. You can decide how much of this to add. Maybe a bit more on that one than this one. Reduce it a bit on this side. Adds a nice shine. I'm going to go to layer 10. I'm going to go in with the second colour on the bottom row. Soft brush with an airbrushing, 2% size, 30% opacity, and then especially near the top, create a little shadow so it gives the impression that the eyes are slightly indented into our little character. It makes a big difference. We can do it all the way around, but we're going to have slightly more emphasis at the top. We'll do it all the way around initially, both eyes. Let's increase it up 3%, and then just up near the top, just a little bit more. We don't want to do it too much, it's going to make the eyes look a bit sunken, which isn't going to look quite as cute, but just a little bit. Now, I could add it to the eyebrows. I want them to look a little bit more just very surface level, so just maybe a hint of it underneath them, but I don't want to do too much of that. Almost like they're stuck on. Maybe around the top of the smile there, we can add just a very slim amount. Stay on the same layer. We're going to go in with the colours that are here, so let's go for the 5th colour. Still the soft brush, 4% size, 10% strength. We'll just do a little blush on the cheeks. Make it a little bit of pink kind of colour there. And then we can go to the next colour, the 6th colour, down to 2% size, and just the top edge, the top there, we're just going to follow that shape a little bit. It's going to catch the light a little bit on the top. It's only at 10% opacity, but don't overdo it even for this. And maybe we'll give those sort of a bit more of a 3D-ness as well. So let's go for the 2nd colour on the bottom row, just underneath. Just a hint. Gives them a bit of depth. Not too much. Okay, I'm going to go back to layer 7. I'm doing it underneath layer 8, otherwise it will clip and mask it to it. So I'm going to create a new layer, but it goes underneath the main shape of layer 8. So layer 15 is down here. I'm going to go in with the 1st colour on the bottom row. Medium hard brush with an airbrushing, 3% size, 100% opacity. And well, we're going to do a couple of little legs. So close up this gap at the bottom, have a flattening out. Still a curve, but a flattening out. Nice little round shape. And then it just kicks up, straight up like that. So you've just got a leg, a little bump with a slight flattening out on the bottom edge. So again, I get kind of flattening out on the bottom edge, then a rounded shape. Circle that in, try to match it up. And then it just kicks up. And we can articulate this a little bit in a moment, but try to get that flattening at the bottom so it feels like it's got a bit of weight. It's softening and flattening that at the bottom edge. If it's gone a bit messy, doesn't matter, we can tidy it up. And then at either side, so I'm going to do it just below where the eye is. A little curved in hand. A little bump on the end. Curve it up. And then just a little bump to suggest that thumb maybe. Don't want the arms to be too thin. Something like this. I suppose you could select freehand, draw around that bit, close the loop, 3 fingers down, copy, 3 fingers down, oops, 3 fingers down, paste, uniform, transform, flip it horizontally and just move it over here. Just saves a bit of time. That way you can be more confident that you've got it the same. Deselect and just fill that in. Take the inserted image, tap on it and merge down so all of the limbs are on one layer. I'm going to tap on it and put on the alpha lock. I'm going to go in with the soft brush with an airbrushing. Go to the second colour on the bottom row. 2% size, 20% strength. Just a blob on the thumb. And then just to articulate it slightly differently. The light is going to come and maybe hit this outer edge. Again, we've got the alpha lock on, so we can't be untidy with it. And on this one, well, it's generally more in the shadow, so we won't do it on this edge. Just a little bit more in this area here. Not too much though. And then just this side of that chunky bit of leg. Just this side. Just a little bit on the foot. Then I'm going to go for a lighter colour. Let's go for the 10th colour. I'm going to change brush. I'm going to go to the charcoal burnt tree. Still at the same settings as before. I'm going to put it to maybe 5% size, 50% opacity. Just curve it in. Give it a slightly different texture than the main body of the acorn. Articulate the thumb a little bit, a few taps of that. Otherwise, blend it in. Same over at this side. A bit less maybe. Again, just concentrate on the very edge. Get a bit more light there. A little bit on the straight up bit of the leg. A little bit in here. Not too much. I'm going to go back to the airbrushing soft brush. I'm going to go in with the dark colour. So we're going to go for the 7th colour on the bottom row. Lower that 2% size, 20% strength. I'm just going to exaggerate some of this darkness around this edge on the inner side. Smooth it in a little bit, soften it in, articulate that thumb a little bit. Go and do something similar over here. Bring that curve around the bottom. Bring it in here, definitely around the bottom of that little foot, but also underneath. It's going to have a really dark shadow underneath the body of our character. For it to sit underneath there, it needs a nice amount of darkness, otherwise it doesn't make a lot of sense. We can re-articulate the division, maybe just turn it down 1%, divide where the toes are, articulate it round, again at the bottom. Let's move to a highlight colour, 10th colour. Let's just think about the middle of those shapes, the actual edge there too. Brighten them up to some extent. I think I'm going to go back to layer 10. I'm going to go in with the dark colour, the 7th colour. Just with this soft brush, curve a line the other way so it feels like we've really shown how the arm connects there as well. I think it looks a bit better for it. Now from this layer, I'm going to create a layer above. Again, the clipping mask automatically is there, but it's above the light. I'm going to go in with the charcoal burnt tree brush. I'm going to put the streamline amount at 50 and the stabilization at 50 within the stabilization settings. Done. I'm going to go to the first color on the bottom row. I'm going to use the dark color initially. 2% size, 100% opacity. And then just from this curve, we're going to do some curves up. You can see how I'm applying it. And I'll do it quickly and then just explain what I've done. So we want like a straight line here and then curves here that follow that. And it's better to do it a little bit more quickly. I think if you hesitate too much, you actually can end up dithering and you don't get the same shapes and the same effect. You can add extra lines in here just so it doesn't look too uniform. Fill in some of those gaps. And then that's going to start curving the other way now. So subtly initially, again, just move quickly and then gradually it's going to become more like the outer edge. Now, admittedly, that takes a little bit of practice. Practice it a few times. It isn't necessarily going to work first time. But with the stabilization on, it should assist. And then we can just go over some of these make them a bit more firm, a bit darker. Go over them a few times. That's fine. With that layer, go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, zoom in, blur it in a little bit, maybe only about 2%, deselect, keep adding more. Now it is going over some of the features we've added. That's fine, we can go in and erase this where necessary. Bring it down from the top. Don't neglect to add it up there just because we've moved it up here and then we haven't bothered to add it near the top, but we need to make sure it does connect. Like I said, we can go with the eraser, put the eraser to the medium brush with an airbrushing, 2% size, 100% opacity, and just remove it where it's necessary. So for example, on the cheeks, I would just softly remove that there and there. Don't really want it over the top of there. I would also tap on it and put on the alpha lock, and we can lighten up the color, so we can go to the second color, maybe switch to the airbrushing soft brush, 5% size, 50% strength, and as it is in the center area here in the face, we don't want the dark lines as much anyway. So the dark lines we want more where it is dark, naturally enough. So with this now, we can just soften it up for the main areas, and that looks better. Also go along to the third color, and then even lighter for the middle bit. I'm also going to go back to the layer 10, and I'm going to go for the fourth color with the soft brush. Now we've got everything in place. I'm going to go 7% size, maybe about 15% strength. Lighten up the face, make it glow a little bit, gives it a bit more life, not too much. I think for the whole character it needs to be grounded, so what I should do really is go back to layer 7, maybe stay on this layer, and we'll go in with a shadow. We'll go for the dark colour, the 7th colour on the bottom row. Soft brush with an airbrushing, 2% size, 30% strength initially, and just underneath the feet we definitely want to create a look that it's standing on the ground, certainly. Then put it up, 5% size, 15% strength or so, and then just underneath needs to feel like it belongs in its environment. Again, the sun, we're going to do slightly from that side, so maybe just the shadow off to one edge a bit more. Give it a bit more weight. Back on layer 10, I'm going to go in with the first colour on the bottom row, soft brush with an airbrushing, make a bit more shadow down here, 2% size, 40% strength, add a bit more darkness down here. Again, you don't have to worry about the edges too much. Turn it down, extend some of these lines up. Shadow should be more, or the lines should be darker, more impactful. I'm going to go to the very top, create a new layer, layer 17, and I'm going to go for the 10th colour on the middle row, still the soft brush, 2% size, 40% strength. I can just go and make more of a feature of some of these highlights. Bring out the light a little bit more on the edge. I'm going to go to the first colour on the bottom row, just maybe slightly bring out the edge of the arm a little bit, make it a bit clearer. And I can go for a lighter colour as well. Let's go for the 10th colour on the bottom row. In addition to that, also have some lighter highlights. So I'll create one last layer, layer 18. I'm going to go in with the darkest colour we have, the 7th colour. I'm going to go in the organic rainforest brush, default settings. I'm going to put it to 2% size, 100% opacity, and then just at the edges, I'm going to give the little character some hair. maybe just a little bit of a fringe as well. Just a few tufts. I'm not going to do too much. It's just kind of cute. And then we'll go to the first colour on the top row. Just a few taps of this just to give it a little bit of highlight so we can see the green kind of little mossy colours. Second colour on the edges. Third colour. Again, not too much. Just a few touches, I think goes a long way. Okay, I'm going to leave this little character here at this point. I hope you've enjoyed following along. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I shall see you back here soon.